Nobody knew that the quiet black security guard working nights at the corporate tower was about to save the CEO's kidnapped daughter and reveal a secret that would shake the entire city of Atlanta. Before we get to this wonderful story, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get back to the story. Michael Thompson, 45, had been working as a night security guard at Pinnacle Financial Tower in downtown Atlanta, Georgia, for 2 years. Every evening from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., he walked the marble hallways, monitored security cameras, and ensured the safety of one of the most prestigious office buildings in the South. To the executives who occasionally worked late, he was just another invisible black man in a uniform, reliable, quiet, unremarkable. But what nobody at Pinnacle Financial knew was about to change everything. It was a stormy Thursday night in October when CEO Victoria Sterling's life turned into a nightmare. Her 19-year-old daughter, Emma, had been kidnapped while leaving her evening art class at Emory University. The kidnappers were demanding $10 million and had given Victoria exactly 48 hours to gather the ransom money. Victoria paced frantically in her 42nd floor corner office, her phone pressed to her ear as FBI agents set up tracking equipment. "Please, I'll give you anything you want. Just don't hurt my daughter," she pleaded into the phone. Michael was making his routine security rounds when he heard sobbing coming from the executive floor. Through the glass walls, he could see Victoria Sterling collapsed in her chair, surrounded by federal agents and crisis negotiators. That's when something extraordinary happened. Michael had always made it a point to stay invisible, to avoid drawing attention to himself. But as he watched this mother's anguish, memories of his own daughter flooded back, memories he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. He knocked gently on the glass door. "Excuse me, Mrs. Sterling. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help but notice the commotion. Is there anything I can do to help?" Victoria looked up through her tears, barely registering his presence. It's my daughter. She's been taken." FBI Special Agent Robert Davis stepped forward. "Sir, this is a federal investigation. We need you to return to your duties and maintain the building's security perimeter." Michael nodded respectfully, but something in Victoria's voice, the same desperate broken sound he remembered from his own past, made him pause. "Mrs. Sterling, if I may ask, do you have any information about who took her? Any details about their demands? You haven't seen the biggest surprise yet?" Agent Davis frowned. "Sir, I need you to leave now. This is classified information." But Victoria, clutching at any hope, looked directly at Michael. "They want $10 million. They said they'll call back in 2 hours with instructions for the drop." Michael's expression changed subtly. Years of training kicked in as he processed the information. "Mrs. Sterling, did they specify how they want the money delivered? Cash, wire transfer, cryptocurrency?" "Cash. They want it in unmarked bills." Victoria wiped her eyes. "Why are you asking these questions?" Agent Davis stepped closer to Michael, his hand instinctively moving toward his weapon. "Sir, I'm going to need to see some identification." "How do you know so much about kidnapping protocols?" Michael slowly reached for his wallet, his movements calm and deliberate. "Because 5 years ago, I was FBI Special Agent Michael Thompson, specializing in kidnapping and hostage recovery. What happened next left everyone speechless." The room fell completely silent. Agent Davis stared at the ID card Michael handed him, his eyes widening as he read the name and badge number. "Agent Thompson? The Michael Thompson who led Operation Nightfall?" Davis's voice was barely a whisper. "But you're supposed to be dead?" Michael finished quietly. "That was the idea." Victoria looked between them, confused and desperate. "I don't understand." "What's Operation Nightfall?" Agent Davis was still staring at Michael in disbelief. "Ma'am, Agent Thompson was one of the most decorated FBI agents in the Southeast. He single-handedly dismantled the largest kidnapping ring in Georgia's history, but his cover was blown during the operation, and my daughter Sarah was murdered because of it," Michael said simply, his voice steady despite the pain in his eyes. "The same criminals I'd been hunting for 3 years killed my 16-year-old daughter to send me a message. After that, I requested to disappear completely, but the most shocking revelation was still coming." Victoria's heart broke as she saw the pain in Michael's eyes. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Mrs. Sterling," Michael said, his voice taking on the authority he'd hidden for 5 years. "I need to ask you some specific questions about the kidnapping, the way they're handling this operation, demanding cash, the 48-hour timeline, taking a college student. It matches the profile of a group I've been tracking." Agent Davis pulled out his phone. "Thompson, if you're really back, we need to call this in immediately. The Bureau thinks you're in witness protection in Montana." "I am in witness protection," Michael replied, "but some things are more important than staying hidden." He turned to Victoria. "Mrs. Sterling, I believe your daughter was taken by the same organization that killed my Sarah. They call themselves the Southern Network, and they specialize in targeting wealthy families in the Southeast." Victoria's face went pale. "You mean this isn't random?" "No, ma'am. They've been watching your family for months, learning your routines, your daughter's schedule, the art class, the route she takes home. They knew exactly when and where to take her. Wait until you see what Michael discovered next." Michael walked to Victoria's computer. "May I?" She nodded, and he began pulling up security footage from the building's extensive camera system. "If they've been watching your family, they've also been watching this building. They know your work schedule, when you arrive, when you leave." His fingers moved expertly across the keyboard, calling up footage from the past month. Agent Davis watched over his shoulder. "Thompson, you've been analyzing this for weeks, haven't you?" 2 months, Michael admitted. "I noticed the same black SUV parked across the street on Tuesdays and Thursdays, the days Mrs. Sterling works late. I ran the plates through old contacts. The vehicle is registered to a shell company I recognize from my previous cases." Victoria stared at him. "You've been protecting me without me even knowing it?" "It's what I'm trained to do, ma'am." "But I was hoping I was wrong about who was involved." Michael pulled up footage from 3 days ago. "There, see that man in the baseball cap by the coffee shop? He's been photographing everyone who enters and leaves this building. His name is Carlos Mendez, and he's wanted by the FBI in connection with 4 other kidnappings." But there was something even more shocking Michael hadn't revealed. Agent Davis was already on his phone, calling for backup and alerting the task force. Michael continued analyzing the footage with the expertise of someone who'd spent decades hunting these exact criminals. "Mrs. Sterling, I need to tell you something else," Michael said quietly. "The reason I took this job, the reason I've been working at this specific building, it wasn't coincidence." Victoria looked confused. "What do you mean?" 3 months ago, I received intelligence that the Southern Network was planning something big in Atlanta. They were targeting a high-profile family to make a statement and secure a major payday. When I saw your name on their target list, I applied for this security position specifically to protect you." Agent Davis stopped his phone call. "Thompson, are you saying you've been running an unauthorized operation?" "I'm saying I couldn't let another family go through what mine did." Michael's voice was firm. "I've been feeding information to the Bureau through encrypted channels, but I needed to be here, on the ground, to ensure Mrs. Sterling's safety. Victoria was processing everything. You gave up your new life, your safety, to protect my family. Mrs. Sterling, when I lost Sarah, I lost everything that mattered to me. I couldn't save her, but maybe I could save someone else's daughter." The biggest shock was still to come. Victoria's phone rang. The kidnappers were calling back early. Agent Davis quickly activated the tracing equipment while Michael listened intently to both sides of the conversation. "We want the money delivered to the old warehouse district on Marietta Street," the kidnapper's electronically disguised voice demanded. "Come alone at midnight or your daughter dies." When Victoria hung up, Michael was already shaking his head. "That's not their real drop point. It's a decoy location they use to test whether law enforcement is involved." Agent Davis frowned. "How can you be sure?" "Because I've seen this exact pattern 4 times before. They'll watch the decoy location from a distance. If they see any sign of FBI presence, they'll move to their real location and—" Michael stopped, not wanting to finish the sentence in front of Victoria. "And what?" Victoria demanded. "And they'll eliminate the hostage to send a message," Michael said quietly. Victoria felt her knees buckle. "So what do we do?" Michael stood up, and for the first time in 5 years, he looked like the decorated FBI agent he'd once been. "We're going to save your daughter, but we're going to do it my way." What Michael did next shocked even the FBI. "Thompson, whatever you're thinking, you can't go rogue on this," Agent Davis warned. "The Bureau has protocols." "The Bureau's protocols got my daughter killed," Michael replied firmly. "These people know how law enforcement operates. They're always one step ahead, because they're predicting standard FBI procedures." He turned to Victoria. "Mrs. Sterling, I need you to trust me completely. We're not going to give them money, and we're not going to follow their instructions." "But they'll kill Emma if I don't do what they say." "No, ma'am. They'll kill Emma if we do what they expect us to do." Michael's voice carried absolute conviction. "But they won't expect what I'm planning." Agent Davis crossed his arms. "And what exactly are you planning?" Michael walked to the window overlooking downtown Atlanta. "The Southern Network has made one critical mistake. They assumed they were dealing with a frightened mother and standard FBI response. They have no idea that the man who destroyed their original operation 5 years ago is still alive." "Thompson, you're talking about walking into a trap." "No," Michael said, turning back to face them. "I'm talking about setting one." At 11:45 p.m., Victoria sat in her car at the Marietta Street warehouse, exactly as instructed. But she wasn't alone. Michael was hidden in the back seat, and Agent Davis had a surveillance team positioned 2 blocks away, far enough to avoid detection but close enough to provide backup. "Remember, Mrs. Sterling," Michael whispered through his earpiece, "when they call and change the location, act surprised and frightened. Don't let them know we're expecting the switch." Right on schedule, Victoria's phone rang. "Change of plans. Drive to the abandoned mill on Peachtree Industrial. You have 20 minutes. As Victoria drove to the new location, Michael was already implementing his plan. "Davis, they're moving to location B, just like I predicted. Emma will be held in the main building while they position lookouts at 3 points around the perimeter." "How can you possibly know their exact setup?" "Because I studied this group for 3 years, and they haven't changed their operational pattern. They're creatures of habit, and that's going to be their downfall." At the abandoned mill, Victoria walked toward the building carrying a briefcase full of fake money, her hands shaking with fear. Through her earpiece, she could hear Michael's calm voice guiding her every step. 30 yards ahead, there's a guard with a rifle positioned behind the loading dock. Don't look directly at him, but I need you to drop your car keys when you're exactly 10 feet past the blue dumpster." Victoria followed the instructions perfectly, creating the distraction Michael needed. In the shadows, he moved with the precision of someone who had done this countless times before. What happened next took place in less than 3 minutes, but it dismantled an entire criminal operation. Michael neutralized the perimeter guards silently, using skills he'd hoped never to need again. He found Emma tied up in the basement of the mill, guarded by 2 men who never saw him coming. "Emma, I'm here to take you home to your mother," he whispered as he cut her restraints. "Stay quiet and follow my lead." By the time the kidnappers realized their operation was compromised, Michael had Emma safely away from the building and was calling for Agent Davis to move in for the arrests. 3 hours later, back at Pinnacle Financial Tower, the FBI had arrested 7 members of the Southern Network, including Carlos Mendez, who turned out to be the group's leader. Emma Sterling hugged her mother tightly while Agent Davis briefed them on the operation's success. "Mrs. Sterling, Agent Thompson's plan was flawless. We captured the entire cell, and they're cooperating with our investigation into other kidnappings across the Southeast." Victoria looked at Michael, who was quietly preparing to leave. "Where are you going?" "Back into witness protection, ma'am. My job here is done." "Wait," Emma said suddenly. "Mr. Thompson, my mother told me about your daughter, about Sarah." Michael paused, his hand on the door handle. "I want you to know that because you saved me, Sarah's death wasn't meaningless. She's the reason you were here to help us." Michael's composure finally broke. Tears ran down his face as he nodded silently. But the story was far from over. Victoria stood up. "Michael, I have a proposition for you." "Mrs. Sterling, I want to offer you a position as Director of Corporate Security for Sterling Enterprises. Not as Michael Thompson, the security guard, but as Special Agent Michael Thompson, with full authority to protect our employees and their families. Agent Davis smiled. Thompson, the Bureau would support that arrangement. You'd be working with us as a private contractor, specializing in high-risk corporate security. Michael looked around the room, at Victoria, whose daughter was alive because he'd broken his cover, at Agent Davis, who represented the career he'd thought was over forever, at Emma, who reminded him so much of his own lost daughter. "There's something you should know," Michael said quietly. "Taking this job, coming out of hiding, it means the people who killed Sarah will know I'm still alive. They'll come for me, and anyone close to me will be in danger." Victoria didn't hesitate. "Then we'll face that danger together. You didn't let me face this alone, and I won't let you face your battles alone either." 6 months later, Sterling Enterprises had become the safest corporation in the Southeast. Under Michael's leadership, they had implemented security protocols that became the industry standard. He had also established the Sarah Thompson Foundation, providing security consulting services to families who couldn't afford private protection. The Southern Network's remaining members had been captured across 3 states, thanks to information Michael provided from his years of investigation. The kidnapping ring that had terrorized the Southeast for over a decade was finally dismantled. During the Foundation's launch event, Michael addressed an audience that included FBI officials, corporate executives, and families of kidnapping victims. "5 years ago, I lost my daughter to criminals who thought they could terrorize innocent families with impunity," he said, his voice strong and clear. "I thought my story ended that day. I thought the best I could do was disappear and try to forget." He looked at Victoria and Emma in the front row. "But sometimes the best way to honor the people we've lost isn't to hide from the world. It's to make sure their sacrifice protects others. Sarah didn't die in vain if her death led me to save Emma. And Emma's rescue doesn't end the story. It begins a new chapter where we protect other families from experiencing what we went through." Emma Sterling, now a sophomore at Emory University, had changed her major to criminal justice. "Mr. Thompson taught me that survival isn't enough," she told a reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. "If you've been blessed to escape something terrible, you have a responsibility to help others escape it too." She was now volunteering with families of kidnapping victims, providing support and resources through the Sarah Thompson Foundation. Agent Davis had been promoted to head the FBI's new private sector security liaison program, working directly with corporations to prevent kidnappings before they happened. Agent Thompson proved that the most effective security comes from people who've lived through the worst-case scenario, he explained to Congress during budget hearings. Victoria Sterling discovered that her company's success had made her family a target, but it had also given her the resources to protect other families. She established a fund that provided free security consultations to small business owners who had received threats. "Michael taught me that wealth isn't just about what you can buy for yourself," she said during a keynote speech at the National Business Security Conference. "It's about what you can do to protect others." 1 year after Emma's rescue, Michael received a letter that changed everything. It was from Detective Maria Santos of the Atlanta Police Department. "Agent Thompson, I hope you remember me from the Sarah Thompson case 5 years ago. I've been investigating cold cases, and I've discovered new evidence about your daughter's murder. The people responsible weren't just members of the Southern Network, they were being protected by someone inside law enforcement." Michael read the letter with shaking hands. The case he'd thought was closed forever was being reopened, and this time, he wouldn't have to investigate alone. At the end of the letter, Detective Santos had written, "Your daughter's case file was deliberately buried, but your recent public work with the Sterling family has given me the political support I need to pursue the truth. Sarah is going to get justice, Agent Thompson. Finally." Michael called Victoria immediately. "I may need to take some time off. There's something about Sarah's case that I need to investigate." "You won't be investigating alone," Victoria replied firmly. "Sterling Enterprises has some of the best private investigators in the country. Consider them at your disposal." Emma, who was interning at the foundation that summer, overheard the conversation. "Mr. Nate Thompson, you saved my life." Now let us help you get justice for Sarah. This story teaches us that heroism often comes from people who've experienced the worst tragedy and chose to transform their pain into protection for others. Michael Thompson spent 5 years hiding from his past, but when another family faced the same danger that destroyed his own, he risked everything to save them. Victoria Sterling learned that true leadership means recognizing extraordinary people regardless of their current position. The quiet security guard who protected her building turned out to be the most qualified person to save her daughter's life. Emma Sterling discovered that surviving a traumatic experience creates a responsibility to help others avoid the same trauma. Her rescue became the foundation for a movement that would protect countless other families. And Agent Davis learned that the most effective law enforcement comes from collaboration between agencies, corporations, and communities working together toward common protection. So ask yourself, who are the hidden protectors in your life? The security guard, the doorman, the night shift worker? What experiences have shaped them? What capabilities might they possess that could help others in times of crisis? True safety comes not from avoiding danger, but from having people around you who've faced danger before and know how to overcome it. Sometimes the person best qualified to save your life is someone you've never really noticed. Thank you very much for listening. Please let us know what you think of this story in the comments. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any other videos.